Representative Olsen, you are recognized for 6 minutes and 57 seconds debating for the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an issue near and dear to my heart. I can't speak for anybody else, but I can say when I ran, this was the foremost issue of my campaign. I was not a one-issue politician, if you will, but this was clearly the most important. I took a little bit of ridicule for it. Isn't he a fool? Thinks he's going to eliminate abortion. But it didn't matter to me. Doesn't matter postcards for or against. It's the right thing to protect innocent human life. And we must honor the life of the mother. We must honor the life of the baby. Let me address a few more issues. Separation of church and state. A lot of people think that's in the Constitution. Now, my colleague did not say that it was in the Constitution, but that is a common belief. But the phrase separation of church and state is nowhere to be found in the Constitution. This was in a letter from Thomas Jefferson to a group of Baptists in the state of Rhode Island. And what the Baptists were concerned about, looking at their heritage in Europe, was that whatever country you were in mostly determined your denomination. If you were Southern German, you were probably Catholic. If you were Northern German, you were probably Lutheran, and on we go. If you were Scottish, you were probably Presbyterian. And he was assuring them that in this country, we were founded as a Christian country, but we were not going to require that you belong to some certain specific denomination. That's what it was about. It was not an affirmation that God's people and God's truth cannot get in the public square. In fact, if we look at history, in the early days of our country, the leading preachers of the day weighed in heavily on the questions of the day, and they were highly regarded and looked to for wisdom. I would that it were so today. But no, separation of church and state was in the context of not establishing that you must belong to a specific denomination. A brief observation regarding embryos. This was discussed in the prior bill. And the thought was, well, they're not quite a person if they're an embryo. Now, I don't agree with that particular assessment. I believe life begins at conception. But for the sake of argument, let's deal with that. If embryo is not quite there, I don't agree, but let's say the embryo is not quite there, then in this case, I would expect numerous who voted against the last bill to vote for this bill, because this bill addresses the issue further down the road by several weeks, let's say. As my colleague stated, he can't give an exact time, neither can I. But if that were the case, if that's a legitimate argument, I would expect that there be several votes for this one because there's a heartbeat. Let's deal with another issue. The issue of rape. Terrible thing. In the statutes of Oklahoma, it does allow capital punishment for the crime of rape. I wish we used it more than we do. That's how serious it is. But really, many times, this is not a sincere argument. Sometimes it's an excuse. And I can't read the minds of anybody else who's here today or anybody in particular, but very often this is an insincere argument and an excuse because, you allow no exceptions for rape. If we allowed exceptions for rape and incest, would you then vote for the bill? Mr. Speaker, normally, very commonly, the answer is that they wouldn't vote for the bill even if you had those exceptions. But let's deal with that. Rape is a horrible trauma. There's no question about that, a terrible trauma. Abortion is also a horrible trauma. All right? Women who are raped have a suicide rate of about 13% of the population that has experienced that horror. And women who have abortions, and this is from studies in the United States, Finland, and Italy, they are anywhere between 2 times and 6 times as likely to commit suicide. So in both cases, they're more likely to commit suicide. But you will not fix one trauma, rape, by another trauma, abortion. You will probably compound them and make them quite a bit worse. And we also have to consider, there's the rapist. He should probably be put to death. There's the woman. She's innocent. There's somebody else in the equation. There's a baby. She didn't have anything to do how this whole thing got started. Had nothing to do with it, nothing to say about it. Why should we kill her for the sin of her father? She couldn't help that. She has a right to life. Foundations. Let's talk about foundations, making law. What should the government do? One of our highest foundational responsibilities is to protect innocent human life. This is an equal rights issue. Let's protect the life of the mother. Let's protect the life also of the baby. Mr. Speaker, I urge you to vote yes on this bill.